Hey friends, welcome back for another tutorial. So today I'm going to be teaching you how to make this beautiful weave here that can add a ton of detail and embellishment on your beautiful pieces. So this is technically the bottom of it. Some people call this a mountain weave, some people call it a wheat weave, whatever you would like to call it. I'm going to teach you how to do this weave, and we're going to learn it with 2 wires, 3 wires, 4 wires, and 5 wires. So first up, the tools that you'll need: nylon pliers, a pair of flush cutters, and a pair of tweezer nose pliers. This specific one, the base wires were 21 gauge round and the weaving wire was 28 gauge round. For this tutorial, we're going to be using 21 gauge round and 26 gauge round, all dead soft copper wire. So, however many pieces you would like. For your base wires, we're going to go ahead and cut those. I'm going to cut 5 all together since we're going to be learning how to do the 5 wires all together. Just making them all about the same length here. And one more. We're just going to straighten these out as much as possible. I like using my fingers, the heat from my fingers, to help soften it and straighten it a little bit. But if that's not quite working for you, what you could do is grab your tweezer nose pliers, pinch on one end, and then take your nylon pliers, pinch, and pull straight out. You can do that with each of your 5 wires, or however many wires you cut that you're going to be using. There we go. Okay, so we're going to set 3 wires aside and start with our 2 wires. There's a couple things when it comes to weaving that you need to remember. One is how tight you're holding the wires. The tighter you hold the wires, the more your body heat is going to heat up these wires and soften them. That means as you're weaving, these wires are going to bend a lot easier if it's soft down here. We don't want that, so you don't need a super tight grip. You just need to hold them tight enough that it's going to keep it steady for you. Second tip is add 1 wire at a time. So as we're starting, we're just going to have 1 base wire in our hand, the 21 gauge round. And as we're ready to go up to the next piece of wire, that's when you add your next wire in. The third tip, and most important, is the tension. So with your weaving wire, how tight are you pulling it? How much tension are you putting on that weaving wire? The more tension, the more these base wires are going to bend out of place. So let's go ahead and start with our first wire. We're going to do the two wire weave first. So you're going to see how versatile this design is, because you could do it with as few as 2 wires or as many as 10 wires or more if you wanted to. So I'm just going to crisscross my weaving wire, which is 26 gauge round, over my base wire, 21 gauge round. I'm just going to hold those on top of each other with my thumb, and I'm going to wrap 3 times. So there's 1, 2, and 3, and just push those together so they're real nice and close, and just like that. Now we're ready to go up to the next step. So we're going to add in our second wire. Now I'm going to hold these 2 wires in place with my thumb while I'm ready to wrap the next one. So to add in your next one, we're going to go on the front of wires 1 and 2, do 1 full loop around wire number 2, Now we need to mimic the side where we first started. So we've got the wire over top of 1 and 2. So we're going to sneak around behind and then wrap all the way around wires 1 and 2. Come all the way back. Now we need to mimic these 3 first wires. So we're going to go 1, 2, and 3. Now they should be loose enough that you can just use your fingers to be able to slide them together, or you can also use your tweezer nose pliers to slide them together if you're going to use a pair of pliers to do it, or even your nylon pliers. If you're going to use a pair of pliers to do it, don't ever put your pliers right on top of your weaving wire. Put it just before. Don't put a lot of pressure here, and then slide and push. Now I'm going to show you again what I do with my fingers to make sure I'm not putting too much tension on this weaving wire. You can use your thumb or any other finger that you want and push the wire up to where you want it to lay. Now this weaving wire has a lot of tension on it, right? Now I'm going to push it down. So I'm pretty much just folding the wire where I want it to go. Fold it down. We got to do that 1 wrap around wire number 2. Now I'm using my finger to push it in, and then we're going to fold up again. Fold down. Now remember, we're going over wires 1 and 2 on the front. Fold up. Fold down. Now, as you get the hang of weaving, it's going to be a lot quicker for you to be able to move the wire around like that. But if this wire has too much tension on it, you'll know it because these 2 base wires are going to come together, and it's going to be extremely difficult for you to get this weaving wire in between them to do the next wrap that you need to do. So again, we're going to fold up. Lots of slack on this weaving wire right now. Go in between our 2 wires, and we'll do our 3 wraps around. So I'll kind of keep these spread out a little bit to show you guys. When you use tweezers to slide this in, pinch before, and that should be very easy to slide because again, you're not putting a lot of tension on there. So let's add in a 3rd wire for this design. So we're not ready for that 3rd wire yet, so let's go up to our 2nd. Now instead of completing our full loop around on the 2nd, we're going to fold this wire up, add in our 3rd wire. Now we're going to do a full loop around wire number 3. Now we got to mimic coming back down, so we're going to do that wrap right there. Right there. So the top 2 wires, wires 2 and 3, need a full loop around, so we're going to come sneak behind, come in between wires 1 and 2, fold it up, fold it all the way down. Now we need to mimic the loop around wires 1 and 2. So we're going to fold it up and come over the front of wires 1 and 2. And now we need to mimic the 3 loops. So 1, 2, and 3 around wire number 1. Which the 3 base wires is what I used on this one. The only difference is it's a lot smaller wire. It's a gauge smaller for a weaving wire, and you can see if I push it in really tight, it angles those wires in, just like what's on here. So you can push them in really tight, close together, or you can keep them wider apart, depending on what you want your look to look like. So let's do it once more, and then we'll add our fourth wire. Alrighty, let's add in a fourth wire. So we're gonna step our way up to it, starting out exactly like what we did with the 3 wires. Now again, we're not gonna complete our full loop around wire number 3. We're gonna grab our 4th wire, hold it in place there. Now a full loop around number 4. So now we've got to mimic our loops coming up, going back down. So we've got a loop going around 3 and 4. So let's sneak around the back, bring our weaving wire up in between wires 2 and 3 right here. Fold up and fold down. So now we are equal there. Now we got to mimic this next one, which is looped around wires 2 and 3. So we're going to sneak around the back, come in between wires 1 and 2 right here, fold up, and then we've got to go in between wires 3 and 4. So now these 2 wires, those 2 loops are matching. We've got to match this bottom one, which is around wires 1 and 2. So come all the way down in the back, fold up, and come in between wires 2 and 3 right there. There we go. Now the last thing we got to mimic is these 3 loops around wire number 1. The 3 loops in between are not necessary. I like to do them especially if you're going to be adding the weave onto a piece, because when you are ready to bend it into a shape, this extra space is going to make it easier to bend to form to whatever shape you need to. Also, if you keep the mountain shape or whatever you would like to call it on the weave open, because we use 26 gauge, you can now easily go back into 28 with 28 gauge and slide it in between your base wires to be able to connect it to your piece. Very easily, you're not struggling with wires trying to connect it at all. But you can also slide this one in nice and tight for a different look if you would like to. Just like that. Okay, let's do it once more with 4 wires. So we're going to step our way up. it a little bit easier to see, maybe. There we go. The only force I'm putting on it, on the weaving wire, is when I'm sliding it in closer to my design so that the wires are laying next to each other. Other than that, you should always have a lot of slack and looseness in your weaving wire. Just like that. All right, let's go up to our 5th wire now. So same thing, we're gonna go all the way up to wire number 4 before we add that 5th wire in, because we don't wanna have to try to be holding it this entire time. Just when we're ready to secure it, and then the weaving wire will help hold it in place. All right, so let's not complete that last full loop around wire number 4, and let's grab our 5th wire, put it in, put it in right next to our 4th one. Now we'll go ahead and complete a full loop around wire number 5. All right, we need to match it going all the way down. So first up, we're looking at these two, this bigger loop. So we need a matching loop around wires 4 and 5 on this side. So we're going to come up in between wires 3 and 4, slide that on in place, fold up and come back around the back. So now we've got those two matching. Now we need this next one matching. So we need to go over wires 3 and 4. So we're going to bring our wire up in between wires 2 and 3 here. Fold up. Now we're just going over wires 3 and 4. So we're going to go back down and behind between wires 4 and 5. Now we have matching loops there. So next one down, we are going around wires 2 and 3. So we're going to sneak around from behind and come in between wire 1 and 2. Fold up to go over wires 2 and 3. All right, we got those matching. And one more matching around wires 1 and 2. And the last thing we have to mimic is the 3 loops around wire number 1. There we go. Let's slide it on tighter, just like that. Now, if you want to, none of these are flattened, but we can go ahead and do a flattened version of it, and I'll show you how to flatten them easily when we are done. Let's do 5 wires one more time. let's finish off with our 3 loops around wire number 1. And we'll go ahead and slide this design in just like that. Now, your design should be loose enough on there if your tension was correct that you could just slide one of these wires straight out if you wanted to. Now, to make our design tighter, if you don't want it sliding that easily, all you have to do is grab your nylon pliers and just squeeze right over it. It gives it a slightly different look, but it's also going to keep your design more secure in place, so it's not as easy to slide these wires in and out. Number 5 is still going to be easy since we just added it. That's pulling pretty hard and it's not coming. Whereas just before we did that, it slid pretty easy for us. So it's going to secure your design in place a little bit better. I personally don't like to flatten them down. I like the look of it being a little bit more puffy, but totally up to you. There are other times I flatten them as well. If I do this design for, say, a cuff bracelet, they do get flattened because I hammer it. But still just as pretty, just as elegant. I'm super excited to see what you guys add these pieces to. If you have any questions regarding this design or how to do it, please leave those questions in the comments below. Catch you in the next tutorial.